Hey guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome back to Upside Down Books. Today we're going to be doing a very special and particular TBR for December.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno.
So usually I have my various jars from which I pick for my TBRs, but for December I've decided to do something a little bit different. And this is why. For Christmas, my main present is usually a bunch of books. So I get a lot of books at Christmas. It's usually my biggest haul for the year. And last year I think I had a record-breaking haul, and I want to make sure that I get around to all of them before next Christmas rolls around. So like in a month and a bit time, which is not far to go. And I had a sneaky feeling that I had not read as many books from my Christmas haul from 2019 as I would like to have by this point in the year. I really want one year to be like, yes, I have read all the books that I received last year and I'm ready to start the new ones. I have yet to do that in my life, I'm pretty sure. So those books, the ones I have been picking from this TBR jar, my little egg cup, and so what I've decided to do is that in December, I am going to exclusively read presents from Christmas 2019 and nothing else. So I've made myself a little list, a little spreadsheet to work out how many books I've read and how many books I have to read, and then to see if I can achieve that in December in 1 month. And this was how the statistics turned out. So in Christmas of 2019, I hauled 21 books. I got 21 new books in that haul, which is just insane. That is such a crazy number of books. And throughout the year, I have managed to read 11 of those, which means I still have 10 to go. I would very much so like for this to have been like a smaller number, but here we are. I'm not all that surprised. So yeah, we've got 10 books to try and read. I worked out the page count out of all of those books that I have to read, like how much that all adds up to, and it is about 3.8 thousand pages. And I then thought, well, what's the most I've ever read? And most recently, like my biggest reading month where I've read a lot of books, which was actually in 2019, I read 3.3 thousand books. No, I did not read 3,500 books. I read 3.3 thousand pages. So that's still like not as close to, you know, 3.8 as I would like, but there we go. What can we do? We're gonna try. I was debating whether I would only pick like some and be reasonable, but I've decided that I'm not gonna do that and I'm gonna try and read all of them. I am actually gonna have a fair bit of free time the way things are looking at this point for December, so I'm quite hopeful that I'm gonna have a lot of time to be able to just sit down and read these. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them will be fast and some of them will be slow, I'm sure, but I'm really excited for them and I really want to push myself to see if I can achieve this by the end of 2020. Not before Christmas, because that cheats me out of a few days, but by the end of 2020 so that I'm ready to start my new books that I get this year in the new year. We'll see how we go. I feel like I'm either going to achieve this and it's going to be spectacular, or I'm going to fail miserably. I'm not convinced that there's going to be an in-between. So I then have sat down to work out how I'm going to tackle this. How am I going to read this so that I get through the most number of books most efficiently and I'm not going to get too bogged down with anything. I'm not anticipating that any of these are going to be DNFs or any of these are going to be books I don't enjoy, but I may, if I slow down with some, maybe I'll jump to the next one and sort of spice things up a bit, but we'll see. When it comes to arcs, just as an aside, there are going to be, I think, probably 2 that I will have to read. Or would ideally like to read in December, but that's just probably not going to happen. And one of them is quite relevant to the TBR I've got coming up, so I will explain that in a minute. But I thought, well, do I want to read this like by divvying up genres and rotating through the genres in a particular order? Do I want to read the smallest books to the biggest ones, or the biggest ones to the smallest ones, or do I want to go by rating? And what I settled on in the end is I'm going to try reading these books in order of the highest rated down to the lowest. Now, none of them are like low rated, but I thought that that would be the most diplomatic way to do it, and hopefully a good indication of starting things off really quickly, because if those books are rated like 4.5 out of 5 stars, then surely they are going to be good books that I'm going to get through. So I've got them all lined up here in the order that I'm going to be tackling them. I'm really, really excited. I really hope I can do it. Like, I think I'm gonna be really setting aside some days in December where I will just read the whole day, where I will just not see friends or family and be extraordinarily antisocial, and it will be glorious, and I will just read books. imagine if I achieve this. If I achieve this, this is going to be such a good like little boost to my reading count for the year. It's going to be fantastic. So let's get into it. So the first book that I'm going to be reading is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys, and this is rated 4.36 out of 5 stars, and I have picked this out of my TBR jar once before. So it felt really fitting that this was not only the highest rated book, but it was also like top of the list, because I have that rule where usually a book I've picked before but didn't get to becomes prioritized and has to be one of the first books I read in that new month. I'm not quite going to stick by that rule though, because there's one other book that I have pulled before and its rating is much lower, so it falls towards the end of the list. So for December, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of an excuse to not follow all the rules as strictly as I usually do. But I'm really excited for this one. I've heard really good things. When I picked this the first time, a lot of people were excited to hear my thoughts on it, and I'm really excited to finally be picking it up. It will be my first Ruta Sepetys book, and this one is set in Siberia. I think it's set around the time of the Soviet Union, so 1940s, 50s, somewhere around there. I could be wrong. And it's got quite large font, so I don't think that this will actually take too long to read. The page count only comes in at 350. It doesn't look like it's that small, but it is actually, must just be quite thick paper. So I actually think that this is going to be really good, and I'm excited to be starting the month with this book. So the next book then picks it up with the page count. So the next book on the list is Chasing the Shadows by Maria V. Snyder. This is the second book in the Sentinels of the Galaxy series. I loved the first book. I read it, I think, last year, and I've been meaning to obviously get around to this one since Christmas last year, and I just hadn't quite got there yet, despite this being not only in my presents jar, but also in my sequels jar, which is insane. Now, this is the book that I said would be relevant to one of the arcs I got this month. So it's a bit of a spoiler for my book haul, but I did get sent Defending the Galaxy, which is the third book in the series. HarperCollins very kindly provided me with a copy of that, so I do really want to make sure that I get around to this one so that I can probably read this first thing in January, or if a complete miracle happens, also in December, but like that would be a miracle, so it's not going to happen. I'm really excited about this. This is set like 500 years in the future, and it's all sci-fi, spacey stuff with some weird alien things going on. It is about 440 pages long, and its average rating is like literally 0.01 less than Between Shades of Grey. It is 4.35 out of 5 stars, so I'm hoping that this will be good. I think this will be quite a fast read. Again, it's really big font, so I don't think it's as scary as it looks, and I know that I read the first one really quickly too, so I'm really excited for this one. However, the third book on this list really has me nervous, and that is The Toll by Neil Shusterman, and this one is the third book in the Scythe series, so I have to say this will be exciting for progress towards series, again in my presents jar and in my sequels jar, and just hasn't been pulled out in the, 6 months that I've been doing this. But this one is a much bigger book. It clocks in at about 630 pages, so it's a little bit hefty. It's much bigger than the other books in this series, and I'm nervous. I'm nervous to read it. I've heard some mixed reviews, but this is the third highest rated book on this list. Its average rating comes in at 4.26 out of 5 stars, so I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy this one. I have thus far been reading this on audiobook, and I liked it, but I wasn't loving the audiobook experience enough to read the final book. I don't know, I just kind of felt at that point that I actually wanted to read this at like a faster pace in the physical copy. I can't really tell you why I was so inspired with that decision, because the audiobooks are actually pretty good, but I am excited to visit this in a physical copy. But again, I don't know how it's going to read for me and how fast I'm going to get through it, because I haven't read it in physical format before. But let's pray, because this is obviously a big one, so the page count is already getting quite large now. But if I get through this one quickly, I think I'll be really encouraged to push through and get through more on the list. So coming in fourth place is Lioness, Rampant by Tamora Pierce. This will be finishing another series. Honestly, the number of books in this list, I swear to God, that I'm just suddenly realizing are making serious progress, if not finishing series, is quite exciting. So this comes in again only just slightly lower on its rating than The Toll. It comes in at 4.25 out of 5 star ratings. All of these ratings are only going to be relevant when I'm doing this video here, so they may well have changed by the time you're watching, depending on when you're watching this. So this is the fourth book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet. This series is the first time I've read any Tamora Pierce stuff, and I'm really, really enjoying it. So I'm actually really chuffed that I'm already at the end of this series. This has huge font because it is middle grade fiction, and I'm anticipating it will be quite a fast read. It is considerably bigger than the other books in this series, but it only comes in at 362 pages anyway, so it's actually not too bad. And as I said, I think this will be such a fast read and a fun read. I've loved this series so far. So fingers crossed I get to it after The Toll. I'm expecting that if this TBR goes wrong, it's going to go wrong around about The told, which will be book 3, which isn't great. So the 5th book on the list will be swinging back to historical fiction with Words on Fire by Jennifer A. Nielsen. I have been waiting and wishing that this would get picked out of my TBR jar for months now. I've been so excited for it. It's a beautiful historical fiction book, and I think it's set in Russia, so that's always fun. I love me some Russian history. I've not heard anybody talking about this book, but I am so excited and I love the cover. So this one is only 336 pages long. Again, pretty big font, so we're lucking out on good font sizes, and I'm anticipating that this will be quite an easy read. I think this is more of a middle grade fiction from memory, but I could be wrong there. Its average rating comes in at 4.21 stars, so I'm hoping that I'm going to just love this one. I have really been anticipating it, so I'm really excited that this is coming in at number 5, which means I am likely to at least get around to this one. Whether I get around to the last 5 will remain the question of the month. So the next couple of books are actually non-fiction, so I'm going to have a little non-fiction run, which definitely has me nervous, but I'm hoping will be good, because the first one is The Penguin Lessons by Tom Mitchell, and I think this sounds really cute and fun. It is only like 220 pages. It's really short, but it's got standard size prints, but I think this should be funny. I got this one because I think I saw it, I don't know where I saw it, but I just thought, hey, you know what, that sounds like a really fun read. It's about this guy, and I think, does he end up with a penguin? I'm pretty sure he just ends up with a penguin after doing a bit of traveling in Uruguay. I just want to know more. I really want to know more about this book. So the average rating for this one comes in at 4.08 out of 5 stars, so that is a pretty good rating on that one, so I'm quite excited. I think this is just going to be great. I hope I get around to it. So that brings me to the second non-fiction book that I'll have, and this one, I am nervous. This is not a great book to have on a 10-book TBR list, but that is Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are by Frans de Waal. I've had somebody tell me that I need to watch this guy's TED Talk before I read this, so I probably will make the effort to do that. Now this one, obviously, I feel like the title is relatively self-explanatory about what it's about. I find these kind of books really interesting and I want to read more of them. I think I've been having a really good year for non-fiction books, so I'm hoping that I'll actually find this super interesting and get through it pretty quickly. It's got a few illustrations in it throughout, obviously explaining various things, but and I've heard that his thoughts are really interesting. So yeah, I'm really hopeful that this is going to be fascinating, but I will dip in. If I get into this one and I'm struggling to get through it, I'll probably dip in and out of it along with other books. So the average rating for this one comes in at 3.94 out of 5 stars. So the next book is the other book on this list, which I have previously picked and not got around to, and that is The Light Over London by Julia Kelly. This is obviously a World War II story, and it's quite a short one, and I think I'll really like it. I just didn't quite get around to it in the month that I had picked it out. So this one has 336 pages, and it's got an average rating of 3.82 out of 5 stars, so I'm really hoping that I do get around to all of these. It'll be really tragic if I don't, and then I don't pick them up for a while, but any of these books that I don't get around to, I probably will keep in my presents jar. I had been thinking I would just move them into like the backlist. That's something I got to think about, because now I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Let's move on to the next book. So the 9th book on this list is The Beast's Heart by Leaf Shawcross, and I am actually really excited for this one. I was a little bit sad when I saw that it came in so low on the ratings out of the 10 books, because if I had any choice, I make it sound like I had no choice. This is all of my own making. But if I was deciding myself which book I would start with, I was going to pick this one. This is like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I really love the cover for it. So I don't think this will be too hard to read, but the font is not very big. It's actually quite squishy, so that could slow me down potentially a little bit. It's 339 pages long, and it's got an average rating of 3.65 out of 5 stars. So I don't have a whole heap of faith that I'm going to be getting around to, especially these last 2 books, just because it would be an almighty effort on my behalf if I were to do that. But I'm hopeful that I could just have a spectacular reading month and do so. But when have I ever done that? We would all be very surprised. So that brings me to the last book on this list, and it's actually quite a hefty one, though it doesn't look it, and that is Into the Crooked Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Now, I loved To Kill a Kingdom, which Christo also wrote, but this book here is creeping towards 500 pages. It doesn't look it. It really doesn't look it, but it is. But it does have a surprisingly low rating. The average rating is actually 3.43 out of 5 stars, which I was quite surprised with. I believe this one is about a heist or thieves. And I think there's magic involved as well. So this is the last book out of the 10 on the list. So if I manage to even touch this, to pick it up, I will consider this an absolute landslide win if I can do this by December 31. But we will just have to see. So this is my very special TBR that I have going for December. I'm actually really excited to have a whole month just to try and read this enormous amount of books. This is 3,800 pages worth of reading, which is totally a feasible amount if I have as much free time as I'm anticipating I'm going to, and if I enjoy the books as much as I hope I'm going to. So I'm going to be crossing my fingers. I would love to know in the comments down below whether you think I can do this, or if you think I'm a crazy woman and I'm probably only going to read like 3 or 5. Let me know in the comments below, because I think we should all like place a bet and whoever gets it right wins a plate of cookies or something. But other than that, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.
Alle gloria militari